Hello, this is Greg Allison Green Greg's coming to you on 14 July 22. Time on deck is 1951 hours Central Daylight Time. My friends, we are in a peril today with things going on, and I'm bringing you special guest David Pyne. He is the National Director of Operations for the EMP Task Force on National and Homeland Security, organization founded by Dr. Peter Vincent Price. He's also the Utah State Director, as I'm the Alabama State Director thereof. And David Pyne has revealed something to me that's very, very disconcerting, something that I find extremely alarming. You better be aware of, my friends, because it's about to get real, really fast. And so you better buckle up for this one. This one is going to grab you. So my friends, I'll bring you this kind of stuff so you can keep your eyes wide open and head on a swivel, because it's coming at us fast, and it's unbelievable what's coming. It's really white knuckle. Subscribe to my channel, bang the notification bell, and click all so you can see the other videos I'm going to be coming out with, because these are vital right now. And if you've never prepped, you better be prepping a lot right now, like your life depends on it, because I think it does. If all you can afford is dry beans, rice, and macaroni, or ramen noodles, go get them. But I'm going to tell you what, you need food that says my internet's unstable. So you need food that you can store too, because you may not be able to grow for a little while. You need food you can bug out with. You need food you can bury, because people are coming looking for your food. So if you can do it, I highly encourage you to go to prepwithgreg.com. There, we got a special right now, $150 off food that lasts 20 years, no, 25 years, excuse me, 25-year food. You get 2,000 calories a day, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, a lot more than what the competitors offer. And the 3-month supply is 6 of these buckets. This is 2 weeks. We also got a $50 off for a 1-month supply if that's all you can handle, because this stuff might be the difference between starving and not. So check it out, guys. It's lightweight. You can bug out with it. Your kids can carry it, and you can put it in your backpack with the pouches inside. It's waterproof from the bucket, and the pouches inside too. So you got some redundancy on that. That's why it's good for burying. It's good to throw in your vehicle, whatever you need to get out with, so you can make sure you've got something to keep your family going. And so we're going to get right into it with David Pyne. So David, I'm glad to have you back on my channel again. And you've got some news that really shocked me when I heard it, but I wasn't really that surprised. But the urgency of it is what got my attention. You've got some news, some intel. What have you found out that our people need to know?
Well, firstly, thanks again for having me on your show. So, yeah, the information I have is, first of all, let me just say that I've been predicting a Chinese invasion of Taiwan by 2024. They have an opportunity with President Biden, who's the most pro-communist Chinese president we've ever had since at least Harry Truman, perhaps more so. They have a window to invade Taiwan, very possibly with little to no U.S. military response. And according to an article that I read, it reported that the timetable for them to invade Taiwan has been moved up. We don't know what the previous date was. It most likely was next year, but it appears to have been moved up to October. So as you and I have discussed, the best sea states for the Taiwan Straits are between either April, late March and April, or late September and October. So they have apparently set a goal of full annexation of Taiwan by December of this year. And that's been reported, according to this source. Russian President Putin called an emergency meeting at the Kremlin. Most of his meetings with his inner circle are not conducted at the Kremlin. They're usually conducted at one of his dachas or a location like that. So this meeting reportedly was a video meeting with President Xi and other Chinese leaders, revealing the exact time of the planned invasion of Taiwan to Russian leaders. So that meeting in the Kremlin took place 2 weeks ago, according to this source.
It's been national news. It's been out in the news sources that Putin actually called the Duma, the Russian Congress, back in. He said, "Don't go to your dachas for summer vacation." And he called an emergency meeting, and that coincides perfectly with what you're saying. So,
yeah, it seems legit. So, obviously plans can change, just as their initial plan was to wait to invade till most likely next year, and that's been moved up. So it's possible that it could be reset. But I would assess that there's at least there's over a 50% chance that they will invade Taiwan, and if they do so, it's very likely that they will minimally attack U.S. military bases in the region, which would include our military bases in Japan, Guam, and the Northern Marianas on day one of their planned assault against Taiwan.
well, the Chinese have their rocket forces, the People's Liberation Army, a whole branch of their military, like our Air Force and Army. They have a whole branch that's just rocket forces, and they have thousands of rockets that they call carrier killers and Guam killers, like the DF-21. They got these things ready to go. And what a lot of people don't realize is these could decimate these islands and these bases. We've supposed to have, we've got a couple THAAD batteries out there, but not nearly enough to counter something like this coming in. We should have those islands bristling with THAAD bases, but we don't have nearly enough. And what I fear is they would bring down so much missile fire on these bases that it would make Pearl Harbor look like a picnic, but they would do it to keep our forces from hitting them. So they could have their freedom of operation within Taiwan without having to worry about us. But what worries me, David, if they're going to do that, I think they would try to totally take us down by our weakest link. If they would just go ahead and EMP the American mainland, and by so doing, it would neutralize our nuclear forces, because we couldn't get our emergency. We have to have a validated emergency action message to launch. And so there's two communications that have to get out: validate emergency action message and the validation of it. And you and I both know that our communications would be very severely challenged by EMP super weapons, which could put 200,000 volts, 4 times the old mill Harden spec, out into the systems. I don't know that we can activate any of our nuclear forces. And as you told me earlier, China's got probably enough nuclear forces for a first strike to put one in every missile silo we have to hit our air bases and our submarine bases. The only submarines we might have left is, as if all those things hit accurate, is the ones at sea, but they probably won't be able to get the validated EAM. So we're probably dead in the water at that point. And who knows, maybe even Russia or North Korea would chime in with them. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of our nuclear C3 system, it is very vulnerable to an EMP attack. It's not been modernized recently. There was a limited modernization, I think, that took place a decade or two ago. But it's not reliable. And if an EMP strike were to, let's say, for example, the Russians or the Chinese launched nuclear missiles, and President Biden gave the order to retaliate with a U.S. nuclear strike, and let's say he launched all 400 of our ICBMs. That would be an ideal time for Russia and China to utilize an EMP weapon, because an EMP weapon could essentially take out those, could neutralize our ICBMs while they're being launched.
Wow.
So that they would either miss their targets, most likely, or the nuclear warheads likely would not even detonate. But yeah, in response to your question, I do think Russia would join China in attacking us. They would also, probably with cyber weapons, a cyber attack on U.S. critical infrastructure. I think North Korea would probably invade South Korea simultaneous with Chinese aggressive move against Taiwan. And so, with Russia having invaded Ukraine, they could potentially start a war with NATO, and we would be confronted with a three-front war. And really, the U.S. is no longer capable of winning even in a one-front war with Russia or China due to the depletion and unilateral disarmament of our nuclear and various other weapons. And
Yeah.
we don't have any super EMP weapons like Russia, North Korea, and China do, and that's kind of a dagger to our national throat.
Well, another thing is when I was in the Army, we knew the Russians had more forces, more tanks, and way more artillery and artillery rounds than us. So we figured if they came through the gap coming into West Germany, that our only defense was that we were going to have to use tactical nukes. At the time, we had a lot of tactical nukes in our forces to be available to us, but President H.W. Bush, George the Elder, actually destroyed all those weapons when the wall fell, because he thought, well, hey, it's over. At least that's what he claimed, and he unilaterally disarmed. Well, Russia didn't disarm their tactical, so why did we just unilaterally disarm? Duh, not the brightest thing in the world, but that's what we did, and now we don't have that advantage. They've got the tactical nukes and the strategic nukes to use on the Russian side. And Russia, you just mentioned Russia would chime in. If they did, Russia's got 3 missiles for easily 3 warheads for every silo we got, and then some. So yeah, they could totally disable our forces with the use of the Poseidon submarine, which they did, the Poseidon torpedo launched from the Belgorod submarine. They could take out a lot of our carrier groups. They don't even have to, they just got to get close with a 2 megaton warhead. With a 100 megaton warhead, this full star bomber, which I think is capable of carrying, they could take out our coast lines. So this is a very sobering moment to hear that. And yeah, I could see why that China would want to advance it, because we got a midterm election coming up. We've got they might not want to face a different Congress. They've got the advantage of, we're already confused with what's going on in Ukraine, or we're already tied up with that somewhat. We hadn't put our troops in there. We've committed a lot of our materials. How do you think that affects our balance for being able to respond to China taking Taiwan?
Well, I think it's a trap. I mean, it's a trap that China was very happy to hear of Putin's planned invasion of Ukraine. Of course, China supported 100%. They had full advance notice and coordination. They proclaimed their alliance has never been, it was more than, they were more than just allies. Like they were, really couldn't be any closer militarily, in terms of their alliance. So, for many years, I've been warning for 2 decades, since 2000, I declared that our most pressing existential threat would be from the Sino-Russian alliance. And that was a year before it was formalized. So I was ahead of the power curve on that one. But now there's no one can deny that the Sino-Russian alliance is real. So yeah, I mean, it's a very critical threat. China, of course, as you referenced, they have the largest nuclear capable ballistic missile force in the world, more than Russia, more than the US. And it's the vast amount of that, force is concentrated in the Fujian province, which is opposite Taiwan. So, with the rest of their northeast coast facing, Korea and Japan. So they have the ability to, take us out, even with conventional missiles. They could probably destroy our military bases, sink our carriers and other ships in advance of.
I fully expected to use conventional there. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, it's very possible they could economize, just use EMP strikes, and just with minimal EMP warheads, they could take out all of our bases in the region, both in Japan, the Northern Marianas Islands, and Guam. So yeah, we're facing the greatest threat of nuclear war that we've ever faced. And I want to really just kind of underscore why we're facing it. We're facing it, of course, because of our unilateral nuclear disarmament. If we hadn't disarmed our nuclear arsenal, as every president other than Donald Trump has done between Bush and Obama, Bush Sr., I don't think they'd risk a war with us if we had 10,000 strategic nuclear warheads. I can guarantee you they wouldn't. But not only that, it's our foreign policy. We have this America Last foreign policy in which we try to confront Russia and China at their borders, even though the border areas are not, those are not vital national interests in the United States. And Ukraine and Taiwan would certainly fall under that definition. Those are peripheral nations that are outside what I would call our vital national security interests, which would be the Western Hemisphere, Western Europe, and Japan. So we need to get our ducks in order. We need to have a critical course correction in terms of our foreign policy. We in the EMP task force, our focus has been primarily on hardening the grid against EMP and cyber attack. But really, what I've been calling for is kind of a full spectrum deterrence, where we have to use every tool the U.S. has to ensure our national survival. And at this point, the primary battlefield where that will be fought over is foreign policy and diplomacy. So we need to, at this point, the critical need is for us to mediate a peace deal between Russia and Ukraine, and along the lines of what I've advocated with my articles, peace proposal in the national interest. And we also need to, have some kind of mutual security agreement where Russia and NATO withdraw from Eastern Europe. That would give Russia security in the West, and potentially, as Peter Pyne and I have discussed, could potentially neutralize their military alliance with China. It's vital, we need to decouple Russia from China, so that we don't face two nuclear superpowers at the same time.
Yeah, it's more than we can handle. We're having a hard enough time handling either one of them alone. And suddenly we're facing the prospect of having this war in Ukraine and Taiwan at the same time. I would expect at the same time North Korea would go, hey, I'll join the party. I'll take South Korea. See, in my estimation, the common denominator that's kept North Korea out of South Korea, that's kept China out of Taiwan, and somewhat still reserves Russia, maybe, is United States. But if they hit us with an EMP attack, we're practically done. If they do what Dr. Price suggests they would do, which is hit us with an EMP attack, do first strike on all our strategic weapons, we've got nothing to respond with except the submarines at sea, but we won't be able to get them the emergency action messages probably, and they might do an EMP over them if they launch, but they're dug in. They've got bunkers like we couldn't even dream of to protect their civilians and their government. In both Russia and China, they've got all kind of bunker networks. So we would be at a severe disadvantage. Putin has said that he could fight and win a nuclear war. And it also said, he was saying this years ago, that he expects a war with the United States. And here we seem to be. What do you think about all that?
You're absolutely right. Putin has said he believes that war with the U.S. is inevitable. Now, he hasn't wanted a war with the U.S. He's gone out of his way to avoid a war with the U.S., but he is perfectly ready. Russia is absolutely ready to fight and win a nuclear war. Western national security, quote unquote, experts, they can't quite comprehend that nuclear wars can be fought and won. But and because of that, their false assumption that nuclear wars can't be fought or won, they haven't prepared to fight one. Russia has done everything to prepare to fight one. As you mentioned, they have two massive nuclear underground cities, one at Yamantau Mountain and another, I think, at Kavinsky Mountain. And those are 30,000 feet underground.
30, how many feet?
30,000 feet underground. They can survive a direct nuclear strike.
How many people can you put in those? That's better than Cheyenne Mountain. How many people can you put in each city?
60,000 at Yamantau. I think another 30,000 at the backup.
90,000. Well, even Moscow is. They've got tons of bunkers underground with their subway system. It's 400 feet underground. I've been there.
Yeah.
Beautiful subway system, by the way. Each station's an individual work of art from the Soviet communist days. But my understanding is they've got tons of networks offshooting from that, and they did a drill to put the people in Moscow in these bunkers several months ago. So they're prepared to protect Moscow. Not to mention, they also have a very extensive anti-ballistic missile set of assets around there, the S-500s and S-400s. So they really think that they can survive this. They're far better positioned than us. But so Dr. Pry was telling us, and he said this on my channel and other channels, that what he would expect Russia to do is take out our strategic missiles, EMPs, take out our strategic missiles, and then hold our cities for ransom. That say, hey, if you don't surrender, you don't meet our terms, you don't pull out of Europe, which we probably want to do anyway, because we got our boys need to come home just to keep our nuke plants from going into meltdown. They'll have an urgent need to be here, very urgent, because we're going to be losing the vast majority of our population, no matter what. So the troops will be needed here, and so the Russians will say, "Hey, take your troops out of Europe, take them home, and give us Alaska." And whatever else they want to demand. If you don't do it, we'll start taking your major cities out. And maybe they'll do one an hour, one a day. They got their leisure, however they would want to do it. They could just start hitting one city and then call the president. Well, do you surrender now? No. Okay. The next city is going to be, or maybe they tell them, maybe they won't. And then another city goes, another city goes until we buckle. I imagine Biden would buckle immediately, and probably anybody else would. They wouldn't have any other option. And Biden might be happy to give up Alaska because he gets rid of a red state, and the rest of the union, if there's anything left, would be blue. But yeah, and so it might work on paper, but I don't think the Alaskans are going to allow that to happen in actuality, because they're not going to get invaded. Those are some of the toughest people in the world, and armed to the teeth.
Yeah, I mean, Moscow is there's no way we could destroy it. They have 2,500 S-400, S-500 ABMs defending Moscow alone.
Wow.
A total of 10.
2,500. Yeah, no.
Yeah, at least 10,000 S-400 and S-500s defending all of Russia. You know, by my estimation, they could take out up to 1,000 of our reentry vehicles. But in a second strike situation, our retaliatory strike would likely not be larger than 360 warheads. So,
well, okay, the people need to understand what the American policy is. We used to have launch on morning, but President Clinton, with some divine wisdom, decided no, we would absorb the first strike and then respond.
Yeah.
What? How do you survive? How do you fight like that? The first strike would practically wipe us out. How do you come up with a policy to absorb the first strike? When I heard that way back when he was president, I thought that was just unspeakable.
Yeah, yeah. You're talking about Presidential Decision Directive 60 that was issued in 1997. It has been the U.S. policy, the policy of the United States, including during the Trump administration, to absorb the first nuclear impact. Not so we wouldn't absorb the entire first strike. As soon as we detected a nuclear impact, we could retaliate at that time. Now, the problem with that strategy is the very first nuclear impact is going to be Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C. will not exist in any nuclear scenario. Any strategic nuclear arsenal that will be target number one will be destroyed within the first 5 minutes of the war.
Well, I'd say Norfolk, Virginia will be gone too, with all the naval bases there. So
yeah,
Ghost is going to be in a world of hurt. And there might be some cities they might just go ahead and take out besides Washington, just in due course, because they're so strategic, like our financial capital being New York City. What do you think New York City would be ransomed or taken?
So a lot of people don't realize that both Russia and China, their nuclear strategy is not to target U.S. population centers. They would take out our military strategic targets, or our missile bases, or bomber bases, or submarine bases. They would do a decapitation strike. They would take out the capital, just essentially destroy the government, collapse, make it so the U.S. doesn't exist as a country. And then they would have, with an EMP strike, they would have the ability to invade and occupy our coastlines at will. So the idea, I think, behind it is to capture some of, but probably not all of the U.S. Infrastructure on our coastal regions intact, so they could have something to crow about. But it would essentially wipe us off the geopolitical map. And at that point, they can implement their, a Chinese, Russian-led New World Order to replace, the Western so-called liberal international order that the Biden administration is willing to sacrifice our country for in Ukraine.
David Rockefeller used to really like the Chinese. He used to brag, "This is the model we all need to follow." You know, he was saying a lot of stuff to that effect. So you know, you really have to wonder about these things. You know, how many people over here are on that side?
Well, Joe Biden certainly is, and he's proven it with his policies.
Yeah, that's scary. So, well, maybe his threatening to attack Taiwan is just to give China the excuse to do what they want to do anyway. So he might be serving them with that. So I don't know. In any event, there's nothing pretty here. This is a very, very serious situation. So just in summary, what David Pyne is telling us is the intel is saying that China actually plans to take Taiwan this fall, this September, October, to have the whole thing complete by December. And this emergency meeting he was talking about, we know that Putin called an emergency meeting of the Duma. And the Duma is there inside the Kremlin, by the way. The Kremlin's the compound. It's got Red Square and all that stuff in there. I've been there. I've actually been in the Duma. I've been to an opera there. So I know what that looks like inside that place. David, this is something that people better wake up to really fast. You've got assets like the EMP task force. You got your own website. Give us the web site for the EMP task force.
Yeah, the EMP task force website is at emptaskforce.us. There you can find Dr. Pry's writings, a lot of, you know, you can donate to our organization. You know, we are a private, even though we are congressionally authorized board, we're a private, organization, and we're a nonprofit. We need funding to try to get our message out, to try to educate the public, and you know, meet with our leaders in Washington, D.C. and elsewhere throughout the country. You can also volunteer. You can, you know, we're always looking for additional state leaders. So you can fill out a form that tells us where you're located, and we can have someone contact you. You can also find my latest articles at dpyne.substack.com. I have a lot of recent articles in the national interest, as well as my Substack site that it's called The Real War newsletter. And you know, talks about Russia, China, all the latest information, threats of World War III, as well as a little military history thrown in as well.
All right. Well, also, I've got freedomrestorationfoundation.org, which I pay for out of my pocket. It's for our organization, the Freedom Restoration Foundation. And if you go to our website, go to the activity center, you can find out how to identify who your state representatives are, who your congressman in the House of Representatives in the U.S. Congress is, who your two senators are. You will discover multiple ways to contact them, and you'll discover there's instructions for how to write them, what to write, what to say, how to do it with email, letters, phone calls. There's the switchboard numbers in there that you can use. All that data is there on our Action Center page. So what would you have people tell their congressman? What does the American citizen need to do right now?
More than anything right now, as I mentioned, you know, we've almost run out of time for the military and EMP option, you know, the grid hardening option. At this point, the critical need is to demand members of President Biden and members of Congress will support and implement a policy that puts America first, that ensures our national survival. I have a presentation on that. It's a couple of, you know, an EMP task force white paper, as well as American First strategy to ensure national survival, which is a PowerPoint presentation that's available on both on my Substack site and EMP task force site. But essentially what we need to do is we need to mediate, have the Biden administration mediate a peace agreement between Russia and Ukraine and ending the war there, eliminating the chance that that'll be a front that will draw us into a third world war with Russia that would likely go nuclear. And then we have to insist that President Biden issue the same strategic clarity that he provided to Russia over Ukraine, which is that under no circumstances would the U.S. send military forces to defend Ukraine. And that's the same. If we had that same guarantee in place, I believe, with regards to Taiwan, that Biden would issue a statement repudiating what he said 3 times, which is that we will send forces to U.S. forces to defend Taiwan. If he were to say that we would not, then I believe China would not attack us, and they would keep us out of any Sino-Taiwanese war, and only if we were then to intervene militarily at a later point would it escalate to World War III. So that is the way we survive to fight another day. That's the way we can buy time for our country to double or triple the size of our nuclear arsenal, to deploy a space-based and sea-based national missile defense system with 5 to 10,000 ABM interceptors, and of course harden the critical need to harden our national electrical grid, as well as other critical infrastructure such as our food and water distribution systems. And that could take 5 years, once we fund it. I mean, the battle is first to fund it. And we've been, the figure that we have is it would likely cost $30 billion to harden the grid, fully across the country. That is chump change. Biden spent 1.5 trillion on infrastructure alone, and that would be just a drop in the bucket. So it's achievable. We can do it, but we need the time. The only way we can buy the time is to change our foreign policy with regards to Russia and China, to only defend and threaten nuclear war over the defense of our vital interests, which are the Western Hemisphere, Western Europe, and Japan.
I want to show a couple things real fast here so that people understand the real gravity of this. We'll do a couple of screen shares. Oh, I didn't want to start there. Hang on a minute. Let me go change something before I do this. Stop that. I don't want to show that page. I'm going to start over. Let's see. Right here. Okay, now I'm going to do the share screen. In case anybody didn't know, next month, Iran, Russia, and China conduct joint drills in Venezuela with 10 other countries. I understand North Korea is part of that. Now, these countries all have a mutual vested interest in stopping us from being able to stop them. And an EMP attack would be perfect. I've said for a long time that Venezuela would be the optimal place for somebody to put a EMP attack on the United States, and you wouldn't know where it's coming from. So this is very concerning right there. And it would, and you wouldn't have to have a full-blown intercontinental ballistic missile launching attack from the Caribbean Sea off the shore of Venezuela. And who did it? As you mentioned to me earlier in an earlier conversation, if somebody nukes us on the ground, we can take the evidence, figure out where it came from. But a device exploding in space, what can we do with that?
We wouldn't know. Yeah, we wouldn't know who hit us. We'd be blinded. North Korea has super EMP satellites in orbit over the U.S. that could strike us from the south. If they have it, Russia and China have that, and those are satellites that they can detonate with zero warning. So we could have a situation where we're just minding our own business. We have what looks like a power outage, and then we try to go to start our car to drive to work, and the cars don't work. And then civilization, as we know it, shuts down. No emergency services, no government communications. The government would collapse. People would starve in place. There would be massive civil strife, gang warfare. It would be an absolute breakdown of society. And EMP, as Peter Price has stated repeatedly, it's a technology destroying weapon that could send us back in the late 19th century technologically.
About 9 out of 10 people will be dead within a year, and that don't even take into account what can happen from the nuclear power plants. I think those estimates are optimistic. I've gone into that in the past, but look, see, Russia's saying, hey, if we keep arming Ukraine, that they might expand into Poland. We've got the situation where the United States has now pledged to stop Iran from achieving a nuclear weapon, although now they have enough radioactive enriched uranium to do it, supposedly. But Iran has protested that. and said that they would have a harsh response to anything in that area. So definitely Iran, Russia, and China may all have a stake in hitting us with an EMP attack. So we this fall, we've got a lot of holes in the Swiss cheese lining up that could let bad stuff through in terms of food shortages, in terms of our economy, in terms of social strife in this country. And then Iran, North Korea, China, and Russia would probably all want to take us out, and this might be their perfect opportunity. So this may be the worst time we've ever. This could be incomprehensible almost.
Yeah, I've studied World War I and World War II in great detail. I believe it was great power alliances that transformed two wars and regional wars in Eastern Europe into world wars. We're facing the exact same thing in Europe today. NATO. If we weren't part of NATO, does anyone think that we would possibly be fighting World War III because we're giving too much assistance to Ukraine? We wouldn't even be involved in Ukraine if we weren't members of NATO.
Well, what does NATO buy us? What does Europe buy us? What strategic interest do we get from Europe? What does Europe do for the United States anymore? We have saved their rear ends in 2 world wars. We kept them getting invaded all through the old Cold War. And, those guys don't contribute nowhere near what we do to their own defense. So what are we getting out of this relationship? There's nothing in Europe that Americans need. It may be an ancestral homeland for some people, but my family can't even remember any connection to Europe. It's been so long ago. So I fail to see why I should give a rat's eyeball, I'll be polite here, about Europe. I mean, yeah, sure, they're people, but so are the people in Africa too that we've allowed to hack each other to pieces. So why is it our interest to risk our nation getting blown to bits for them?
Well, I mean, in terms of our vital national interests, as I mentioned, I define those to include Western Europe and Japan. And the primary reason for that is because those are some of the, primary economic powers of the world. Japan, of course, is the 4th largest economy in the world, just behind India, the US and China, China being the first. China has a manufacturing capability that's nearly twice as large as the United States. We, of course, only produce 66% of our manufacturing goods and have to import most of the rest from China. But also Germany is the 5th largest. Russia is the 6th largest in terms of purchase power parity. And Russia, China combined have a much larger economy than the US. I think it's at least 160%, between Russia and China than what we have. So, but in terms of whether we should be defending Europe, we definitely shouldn't be defending Ukraine. We have no vital interest in Eastern Europe. During the Cold War, U.S. presidents from FDR to Ronald Reagan and George H.W. Bush, were perfectly content with leaving Eastern Europe as part of the Soviet sphere of influence. And it wasn't in our interest to if it wasn't in our interest to liberate Eastern Europe in terms of our vital interests, then it certainly isn't today when we face a much more dangerous, a nuclear superpower alliance with not one nuclear superpower as we had faced during the Cold War with the Soviet Union, but 2, and a 3rd nuclear great power with North Korea that has the potential ability to destroy us with EMP or cyber weapons, without warning. So we are facing a really terrible situation, and U.S. leaders have got to act. We've got to give up this idea, this neoconservative idea, as well as the Biden administration. The Biden administration, actually, it's almost their religion that NATO is the be-all, end-all of U.S. national security. When in fact, as I wrote in 2019, it very well may end up being the millstone that drags us down into an unnecessary nuclear war with Russia.
Yeah, that's what I'm worried about. Anyway, so okay, we've beat this horse enough. We got a lot of risk here. There is this training exercise going on in Venezuela. We are at risk. One thing you're not aware of, I've got a viewer who was working in a dairy. She was a farm girl. She had some strange vision she didn't understand. she saw me talking about EMPs and attacks, because that's what her vision was. She had a vision about an EMP attack, and she didn't understand it. And when I talked to her, I was really stunned, because her vision was 2 missiles from offshore Venezuela hitting the United States. And 2 years and 2 months ago yesterday, I interviewed her on my channel, and she described all these and some other elements in her vision. And one of those other elements took place yesterday, and like a mile marker. Now, I don't know, you may not put any important in that kind of stuff, but how does a farm girl in Wisconsin have the insight to come up with such a brilliant strategy for how somebody might put a sneak attack on the United States or an EMP attack? I was stunned when she told me that she had that kind of vision. And now that she's had one of the milestone markers in her vision, it was supposed to occur just before all this happened yesterday, and this is all in the backdrop of you telling me that Taiwan is on the verge of getting hit, and me seeing Russia, China, Iran all operate right out of Venezuela with a major, massive drill just next month. So I think we got to take this serious, that we do have a real threat. So with that, we've both laid it out here, what people can do. Other than that, the best thing you can do is prep, get ready. If you're living in a big city, maybe they want nuclear cities, but with the power grid down, there's no food and water being pumped in or being carried in. The cities are going to be a center of starving zombies, and you're going to look like Longport. I'd say get out. But you need to find arrangements somewhere else and try to get it coordinated and start working on it now. That's all I can say. Be prepared, get ready. Go to your friends and family. By the way, I'm going to be doing an announcement here in the next day, probably, of a network for people to organize groups to survive an event like this. So we got another website available for that, and I'll be talking about that either late tonight or tomorrow. David, I really appreciate what you do. I appreciate you coming on here. I appreciate you spending your own time and money doing this. I realize that you're volunteering a lot for this cause. The articles you write, all is in volunteer to try to wake people up to the situation we're facing. So I want to say thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me on the show, and thanks for all you do to inform your listeners about the critical national security issues we face today, and most importantly, the EMP threat.
This is very severe right now. So you told me earlier in a conversation that you believe that we've got a 50% chance of China going into Taiwan, and a 50% chance that they would hit us first with an EMP. If they don't hit us first, they might hit us later, but that's at least a 25% chance of us getting an EMP attack this fall. Now, but there's other players that may also want to give us an EMP attack. And with this stuff going on in Venezuela, the Russian attack into Ukraine, racket being made from North Korea, what their tensions with Iran, there's a lot of people, a lot of countries that would probably like to do this. So I think we are in extreme peril right now, and everybody needs to wake up. I do believe that we can survive and get through these things, but people better be waking up right now.
Yeah, I mean, World War II, we never faced, the U.S. was never at risk of being invaded or overrun or even bombed, really, outside of Pearl Harbor by Germany or Japan. They just didn't have the military capabilities. And then, beginning in 1951, the Soviets developed, they copied our B-29 bomber and had the ability to engage in atomic strikes on the U.S. homeland. And nowadays the threat is so much bigger. We used to have nuclear supremacy over them, and now we're at nuclear inferiority with Russia and China, with them far outnumbering our strategic and especially our tactical nuclear warheads, with Russia having perhaps 25 to 35 times as many tactical warheads as we have.
Peace through strength. Now, I will say one thing. If we can survive the next 10, maybe 20 years, probably 10 years, and not get into nuclear war, demographics are stacked heavily against Russia and China. I expect both countries to totally implode because the demographics are really stacked against them. Several geopolitical issues that each face. I can't see those countries holding together. Even if Russia conquered all of Europe and everything else, I don't think they could hold any of it. So if we can just hold on, there's a lot of hope for the future if we don't get in a nuclear war. If we get in a nuclear war, it's going to be beyond ugly. It's going to be a catastrophic nightmare. So, all right, David, once again, thank you for coming on. And let's stay in touch, because things might be popping fast, and maybe we need to do some more, but we're running out of time.
We are.
So everyone, take care. Thank you everyone for watching. Please share this video wide. People need to see these things and the other videos I just did yesterday. Watch my videos from yesterday. Share these videos wide so that the network, so that YouTube will promote them. You need to leave comments, leave your thumbs up, leave the likes, comment on, respond to somebody else's comment, throw a few likes on other people's comments. The more social interaction you show down there, the better YouTube will promote this stuff, and the farther it will get out. People need to see these messages. David, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Take care, my friend, and God bless, and let's hope we get through this.
Yep, you too.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.